What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are actually going to continue our coverage over Spawn for Spawn Sundays. Now, we actually do pick up with Spawn number 12 and Spawn number 13. Now, with these two books right here, we are technically going to find out who killed off Spawn. And this is actually very huge. And what I mean by that is, in the earlier books, we technically know who is involved when it comes to the death of Al Simmons. And of course, it made way for him to become Spawn. But the question was right now, who pulled the trigger? Like, who actually shot and killed off Spawn? And so this book right here is going to tell us that someone else was involved and they actually did the killing. They actually pulled the trigger to kill Spawn. But on top of that, this is a crossover with Youngbloods, another Image property around the same time was kind of big when Spawn was big back in the 1990s. Either way, here is Spawn number 12 and Spawn number 13. And so jumping into today's storyline, we actually do pick up right now with Spawn feeling some kind of connection to a church. Now, when he does go to this church, he remembers that this is the church where him and Wanda actually got married at. Now, this is huge. And the reason why, because we have to remember that Al Simmons, before he became Spawn, he was just a regular guy. Yes, he was a mercenary. But once he died and came back to life as a Hellspawn, he does not remember his past life at all. And so right now it's him gaining back just pieces of his memory and now remember, oh my God, this is where I got married to Wanda at. This is where we had our wedding at. This is very special to me. Now that's also the moment where he does remember that everybody loved the wedding so much. And matter of fact, they loved the reception, the ceremony, every single thing about the wedding, they loved it. But then he remembers one other particular person besides him and Wanda, and that would be Wanda's grandmother. And he remembers that the grandmother and Wanda, they had a very close bond, but also he remembers that the grandmother really did like Al Simmons a lot for her granddaughter. And so he's kind of like, listen, I'm alive again technically, and I have the ability to actually communicate with other people. So why don't I go out of my way to find the grandmother and see if she is okay, but to also make sure Wanda's okay through her as well. Now that is the moment where we actually do jump over to Jason Wynn. Now we have to remember that when it comes to Jason Wynn, he's actually very important when it comes to Spawn mythos. And what I mean by that is, when it comes to Jason Wynn, he used to be the boss of Al Simmons when Al was still alive, because Al was a mercenary, and of course he had to answer to somebody, and so he answered to Jason Wynn. Now, Jason Wynn is also kind of the main reason why Al is dead, because he does play a big role in the death of Al Simmons. Now, he may not be the one who had pulled the trigger to the gun that had killed off Al Simmons, but he is the one who did load up the gun that did kill off Al Simmons. Either way, it's Jason Wynn right now being confronted by his assistant. Now, the reason why, because his assistant just got word that somebody is technically looking into certain files about a certain subject. And of course, that subject is Al Simmons and how he died. And so right now it's Jason wondering, well, who's doing that? And you have the assistant tell Jason it is Terry. Now remember, Terry used to be a very close friend, probably the best friend to Al Simmons when he was alive still. And of course, after Al died, Terry actually married Wanda, and they were able to have a child together. Now that child right there is very important when it comes to all of Spawn comics. Either way, Terry was kind of trying to figure out what really happened to Al Simmons, especially because his wife Wanda was very confused on how Al died. And so he began to look through a bunch of files. And so it's Jason saying, I don't like that. Matter of fact, I want that handle right now. Send some guys over there to scare him so that he'll stop looking into those files of what happened to Al Simmons. But then we jump back over to Spawn. Now, when we do, we actually see him right now going to visit the grandmother of Wanda. Now, when he does that though, right off the bat, she is able to recognize who he is. She's all like, oh my God, Al, that's you. This is crazy. This is amazing, because she recognized his voice and how he talks. But of course, she's kind of like, if you're here, that means you're alive still. But then he has to tell her, no, I'm not alive again. I'm still dead. And the only reason why I'm here right now is to tell you that you're going to heaven after you die. Like, he's saying that he was sent here to tell her, you are going to heaven. There's heaven and hell, and I'm pretty sure you're going to heaven. Now, right after she hears that, she believes that she is going to see him in heaven as well. But he has to tell her, he didn't make heaven. He went to hell because he did a lot of bad things. Now, this is her saying, I don't believe that. I don't believe that the devil has sent you here to tell me that I'm going to heaven. I really believe that you were sent here by God to tell me that I'm going to heaven. But on top of that, I know who you truly are. You are not a bad man. You did not deserve to go to hell. And so in reality, you should be in heaven. Now, he does ask her, does Wanda miss me? And she says yes. Every single time they meet up, Wanda talks about Al. And the way she talks about Al, it shows so clear as day that she's still in love with Al Simmons, even though he's been dead for 5 years. Now, that is the moment where we actually jump over to Sam and Twitch. Now, remember, when it comes to Sam and Twitch, they are technically detectives in New York City. Now, with that being said, though, they have been involved in a lot of cases that also involve Spawn as well. And matter of fact, their most recent case, Billy Kincaid, who was a serial killer that was going around killing off children, well, he was actually killed off by Spawn. But the reason why they got involved because Sam and Twitch were the two officers who had Billy locked away. But of course, thanks to the justice system, Billy was able to actually get out. Now, when he did get out, Sam and Twitch want to make sure he did not kill another child. And so, of course, they watched him, except when they got to his house, Spawn came in there, killed Billy Kincaid, and took his body. And so when Sam and Twitch got back to their offices in the police department, they found the body of Billy Kincaid. And so with the body being there, of course, there has to be some kind of investigation to make sure that Sam and Twitch were not the ones who had killed off Billy Kincaid, even though we know they did not kill off Billy Kincaid. But you have Sam and Twitch say, once they're off probation, they're going to find out who actually did kill off Billy Kincaid, because they did see a red cape, and of course that red cape belonged to Spawn. Now, that is the moment where we actually pick up with Wanda right now walking home with her daughter after a long day of work, and of course went to the daycare to pick up her daughter. Now, that is the moment where they're also confronted by Terry, who is the father to Wanda's child. And you do have all three characters right now just walking home to their house. Now, here comes the problem though, because as soon as they get home to their house, they do see two guys at the front door. Now, to Wanda, these two guys are most likely just co-workers to Terry, but Terry knows who these two guys work for. They work for Jason Wynn. And so right now it's Terry telling Wanda, take our child inside and stay inside, because these two guys are, technically not good. So I need to have a private conversation with these two guys. So please, honey, take our child and go inside right now. And as soon as you have Wanda and their child go inside, you have the two men tell Terry, you know what? You have a very beautiful family. It'll be a shame if something happens to them. And of course, we know these two guys work for Jason Wynn and why they're there for. Now, we do jump back over to Spawn, and we also get this reminder that Spawn right now lives with a group of homeless people in this random alleyway in New York City. Now, with that being said though, right now they're all kind of just celebrating. And the reason why, because Spawn has been able to actually protect them from any kind of harm most recently. Now, of course, you do have Spawn getting very comfortable. And what I mean by that is he no longer wears his mask. And even though his face is really messed up, the homeless people don't truly care at all, because to them, he's one of them. Either way, you do have another guy, one of the homeless guys, take the mask of Spawn and actually puts it on. Now, this is a huge problem. And the reason why, because Spawn's suit is actually alive. It is technically kind of like a parasite. It attaches itself to a demonic soul like Al Simmons. And so when it comes to this parasite and being alive, of course, when the homeless guy puts the mask on, it tries to kill him off. Because again, it is a parasite. And so you have Spawn just barely being able to get the mask off the guy before the guy had choked to death. And so with that happening, it's kind of like, okay, I really should sit down one day and try to figure out how my powers work, but also how this suit works as well. Now, right after that incident, that is the moment where you actually have Spawn get another flashback. Now, with this flashback, it begins the process of him actually remembering who was the killer, who actually did kill him off. Now, again, we know that Jason Wynn did play a very big role in the death of Al Simmons. But again, though, he did not pull the trigger at all. Someone else pulled the trigger. And so, of course, with this flashback, you have Al remember, oh my God, now I know who actually killed me. And matter of fact, it was a close friend, but another friend besides Jason Wynn. It was a guy known as Chapel. And Chapel is right now part of the Youngbloods. And this is where we get our Youngblood and Spawn crossover for this storyline. Now, when it comes to Spawn number 13, that is the book where we actually do learn more about Chapel and Spawn. And we learn that when it comes to Chapel and Spawn, they were actually close friends. When Al Simmons was still alive and was still a mercenary, so was Chapel. They were both mercenaries, and occasionally their work would have them cross over with one another. And matter of fact, when they had some downtime, they would just hang out and share stories. They were actually close friends to one another. And so this hurt Spawn so much because now he knows it was Chapel who had technically killed him. But of course, for him to get his revenge against Chapel, he has to break into the Youngbloods base. Now remember, when it comes to Youngbloods, they were technically this superhero team in Image Comics. And matter of fact, they were somewhat popular at first, but over time they kind of died off. Either way though, it was a way for Image Comics to have more than just Spawn comics out there on the shelves of comic book stores. Now with that being said though, Chapel is part of the Youngbloods team. And so for Spawn, he has to break into their base so that he'll be able to actually find Chapel and then hopefully get Chapel out of there so that they'll be able to actually have a one-on-one battle. And matter of fact, he does that. As soon as he's able to actually find Chapel, and even though he's right now with the rest of his team, or most of his team members, you have Spawn use his powers as a way to teleport him and also Chapel away from them so that they'll be able to have a one-on-one battle somewhere else in the world. Now we do jump over to Terry, who used to be the best friend of Al Simmons. Now when we actually jump over to Terry, we do see him right now having a hard time trying to get some sleep. And the reason why, because those two guys from earlier really got to him, and he knows that where they came from. He knows that he's being watched, and he knows that if you're being watched, it's very hard to get on the watch list for that particular group that Jason Wynn actually works for. And so right now, it's Terry trying to figure out why in the world he's being watched by them for, because they didn't tell him why they're watching him or to back off on a certain kind of thing he's working on. And so he's trying to figure out why is Jason Wynn guys are trying to watch him for, because he has no idea, because he has been looking into the files of Al Simmons' death. Now we actually do jump over to Sam and Twitch. Now when we do, we actually see Sam and Twitch right now discussing the idea that basically once their probation is actually lifted, and matter of fact, it should be lifted very soon, they're gonna go out there and try to figure out who is Spawn or how to capture Spawn. because with Spawn killing off Billy Kincaid and them also seeing a small glimpse of him, they want to know why he did kill off Billy Kincaid, and on top of that, who is he? Because again, a lot of their cases had involved Spawn in some kind of way. And so right now it's them saying it's time for us to be detectives and figure out who is our mysterious character at night. Now this leads into a battle between Spawn and Chapel. Now, when it comes to their battle between one another, it's really more of Spawn trying to make Chapel realize who he is. Because Chapel has no idea that Spawn is Al Simmons, because of course, he looks completely different. Even when you have Spawn take off his mask to show Chapel his new face, of course, Chapel has no idea who Spawn truly is, except that is the moment we kind of find out that when Spawn calls Chapel by some kind of very close friendship name, that is the moment where you have Chapel realize, Al? That's you? Like, it's Al Simmons. But Chapel cannot believe that because he did kill off Al Simmons. And so he did it because Jason Wynn, their boss, told him, hey, you have to kill off Al Simmons. And so he did. And so right now, when he sees Spawn, he's kind of like, there's no way you're back. But on top of that, you have powers? Like, what in the world is going on right now? But at the same time though, we kind of find out that the reason why Chapel did kill off Al Simmons, it wasn't just because Jason Wynn said, hey man, listen, I need you to go ahead and kill off Al because, you know, he's just annoying. No, you had Jason have Al labeled as some kind of traitor, that Al was actually working for some kind of other agency and he was a spy for that other group that was spying on Jason's Wynn group. And so that is why Jason had Chapel go ahead to kill off Al Simmons. Now you would think that this would be the moment where you'll have Al and Chapel kind of sit down and actually talk things out, but no, because both men are angry at the world, especially Spawn, because now he remembers that it was one of his close friends, one of his close allies was the one who pulled the trigger that actually killed him off. And this is actually very huge. Now, once their battle does continue on, you actually do have Spawn being able to defeat Chapel. But right after he does that, he leaves Chapel's face scarred just enough to actually change his appearance a whole lot, so that when he's found by the rest of his team, the Youngbloods, they're kind of shocked to see his face because his face now looks completely different thanks to Spawn. And so now Spawn has a new enemy. It's going to be Chapel, but on top of that though, it's Spawn again beginning the process of remembering everything that happened to him right before he died. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.